and I'll be your public service announcement. Today is Friday, and it's 5 o'clock, not too far away. So, welcome.
5 o'clock somewhere.
That's right. That's right. So welcome to today's panel discussion webinar that's titled Uniting the AEC Industry and Construction Administration During a Global Pandemic. And this webinar is a collaboration between AIA Virginia and the Associated General Contractors of Virginia, as well as the American Council of Engineering Companies of Virginia. We're actually in our third year of growing our collaboration, which actually started in 2018 with our ACE Joint Owner Forums. These are our signature events, if you remember, that have the sole purpose of providing the memberships of all three organizations with business development opportunities where we engage in dialogue on design and construction best practices with your clients from our various practice sectors. And so to that end, I'd like to recognize our ACEC Executive Director, Nancy Israel, as well as AGC CEO Gordon Dixon for their assistance and support in organizing this spectacular event here today. Before I introduce our beloved moderator, I'd like to cover just a few house rules to help this program run smoothly as possible. One, this program is being recorded and it will be hosted on the AIA Virginia COVID-19 resource page, as well as on YouTube. For those, that's W credit from the AIA and 1 PDH from ACEC. When you entered the Zoom meeting, the microphone was muted as the default setting. And so I'm asking that you please do leave your microphone muted. We've also reserved the last quarter of this meeting for questions and answers for some engagement. So I ask that you please submit your questions at any time during this program using the chat feature in your dialog box. And so I'll be keeping an eye on that, and we'll be going through those questions at the last quarter of the program. And that chat box is accessed by the chat icon in your toolbar. And so now with that, it is my honor to introduce today's facilitator, Ed Gilligan, who again has been with us moderating for the third season now. And if you don't know Ed, I'm gonna share a little bit about him. Great guy, very experienced. He has nearly 30 years of experience as an architect, which has been almost split evenly between the private and the practice, as well as higher ed. While working in higher ed, he spent about 10 years as a project manager at VCU, serving as its design director of research and facilities, where he managed over 300 million in capital projects for biomedical research facilities. He was also the project executive for the $158 million VCU School of Medicine building. After that, we saw Ed move over to the Virginia Community College system, where he served as the architect for the colleges, as well as the deputy chief facilities officer. And while in that role, he had design oversight and direction for all the capital projects for the 23 community colleges, as well as their 40 campuses. Just about 5 years ago, Ed became the principal and managing partner at KOP Architects in Richmond, concentrating his practice on designing of world-class higher ed learning environments and biomedical research facilities from the operator's perspective. He's a registered architect, a graduate of Virginia Tech. He's a Hokie. He's a past president of AIA Virginia. And in 2014, he was reappointed by the Virginia Senate Rules Committee to serve on the Capitol Square Preservation Council, where this year he's their chairman. Ed is not only a professional colleague of mine, but he's a brother and a good friend. And so Ed, thank you for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Corey. You're very kind. And welcome everybody. We have over 140 participants signed up. Currently we have 103 right now. We expect to get more. I just want to plug, this is our 8th ACE event, our joint AEC industry event. We will survive this crisis, and we will continue to have ACE events later in the year. We believe we're going to do one with the Department of Engineering Buildings, kind of a state agency oriented one, but after that we're going to focus on healthcare facilities. How appropriate given what everyone is going through right now. So we're expecting, if we can, 2 to 3 events later in the year for healthcare facilities, and these are well attended in person. We like to do these in person. With that, we want to introduce our panelists and have each of our distinguished panelists to please take a turn. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your firm, and your practice, what you do, your company. We'll start with Nia.
Hi, my name is Nia Mae Poole, and I am a principal at Poole & Poole Architecture. And our primary focus is multifamily. We practice regionally, so we've got active jobs right now in 15 different states. So we've been getting a lot of good feedback on what's happening on the ground.
Great, thank you, Nia. Let's go to Will Paulette. Will.
Hi, Will Paulette with KBS. I'm a project manager here. We work mostly in Virginia. All of our projects currently active in Virginia. We've got 33 active projects right now, do multifamily, commercial type of work, and we're seeing things change every day.
Well, thank you. We look forward to hearing from you. And last, we have Pat Harrigal with Mason and Hanger. Pat.
Yes, my name is Pat Harrigal. I am a program manager for Mason and Hanger. We do a lot of government work throughout our 3 offices in Lexington, Hampton Roads, and Richmond office. So I'm focused on design build. I don't do a lot of dealing with domestic. We do a lot of work with Decor and NAVFAC. I deal mainly with the Department of State and their overseas program. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Pat. But before we begin, I'm going to set the context a little bit with the situation we all find ourselves in. There was a recent AEC survey that ended on the 26th of March, and it reported 18% of the contractors reported that state and local government agency work had been ordered to stop. 39% of the reporting participants reported that private work was ordered or has been ordered to stop. And 45% are reporting delays due to shortages of materials, workers, or inspectors. An AIA survey was recently put out and ended on the 23rd of March, and 50% of the firms expect interest in new projects to decline in March. 67% of these firms report slowing or stoppages of projects, and 75% of firms have seen problems due to COVID-19, whether it be delays or permitting problems, et cetera. But all firms report some revenue loss, projected revenue loss for April. So this is where we find ourselves now. With that, let's jump into the questions. And we'd like this to be informal. Our participants, we can go in order with Nia, Will, and Pat, or if you don't have anything to add or want to take the fifth, you're welcome. You're welcome to pass. But this is a very informal, so we want to just try to kind of recreate our normal face-to-face ACE events, and when we value your input from our panelists. So anyway, first question: discuss the challenges, the obvious and not so obvious, imposed on our industry as it relates to COVID-19. How are you beginning to tackle these challenges? Example, technology. Which platform are you using, etc.? Or Zoom. How about Zoom? Nia?
Zoom. So we, about 3 weeks, we have in the Richmond office about 22 people, 28 overall in 3 different offices. So we were pretty used to Skyping and Zooming each other, and people in the Richmond office might be working with people in Nashville on projects. So the working from home, as far as technology, wasn't so much of a problem. I think having all of kids home at the same time is really presenting a challenge, especially for families where both parents work. We have an employee who yesterday put in for a mental health day because she could not stand working full time with a toddler running around at the same time. And she was like, it was driving her crazy. So that's on the technological side. With projects, our biggest concern initially, I suspect it was like a lot of people, was the government shutting projects down like they have in Boston, like they have in Miami. We were worried what would happen if inspection stopped? Effectively, it would stop the construction sites. We have not been seeing that, actually. In fact, I talked to all of our guys who did CA between yesterday and today, and they're saying that everywhere that we build, construction is continuing, and to their pleasant surprise, all of the government agencies seem to be bending over backwards to make things run smoothly and make things work. So much so that yesterday we had a Skype inspection. Frankly, from where we're sitting right now, I think as we go through all these questions, we've had incredibly positive experiences. We've had some shutdowns and that kind of thing, but on the whole, people seem to be really rising to the occasion.
Thank you, Nia. Will, what's happening at KBS?
So I'd echo a little bit what Nia said. We are pleasantly surprised. I think if you'd asked me this 3 weeks ago, I would not have expected as much work to have taken place in the last 3 weeks as it has. So we've, I think, been quite fortunate in the construction and industry to be able to continue to operate, not business as usual, but close to. We've seen 2 projects get put on hold, nothing necessarily canceled. Both of those were in active facilities where I think the owner was just wanted to step back and see how everything worked out and not have too many folks in their active facility. One of the challenges we have is the unknown. So we come to work each day and we don't quite know what's going to happen. It's always that way a little bit in the construction business, but I think it's more accentuated now. We don't know what whether or not a locality is going to inspect that day, or whether or not what the government's next announcement has in store for us. So that's been a bit of a challenge. We have to be pretty flexible in how we react. I think communication becomes even more important. One thing we see a fair amount is not the right information on a job site. So we'll see almost daily we get some sort of alert that there's a COVID situation on a job site, but once you peel the onion back a little bit, you realize that's not the case. So it's been important to communicate and make sure there's no disinformation kind of getting spread around, so we don't lose productivity based on something that's not really the facts. We have supply chain challenges. Other states aren't as fortunate as Virginia. So if we're getting materials from Pennsylvania, I know particularly has been a challenge. We're not able to get things we particularly normally would have been able to get there. We also have some warehouses that aren't working at the efficiency they normally would have when they're producing material. So more of that's just being flexible, communicating and reacting to the situation as it occurs. But it goes a little back to the unknown, that we don't quite know what the challenge is going to be in any given day. We're also seeing the increased emphasis on keeping job sites safe. Obviously, sites have generally a lot of labor on them. So making sure that we're keeping the sites safe for workers and abiding by the rules is a unique challenge.
Thank you, Will. Pat, what's going on in your world?
Well, it was doing fine until March 18th, and then we had a mass exodus out of the office. So their IT personnel took a big hit trying to get all their employees hooked up remotely as possible and quickly as possible. With that happening, it seemed to be kind of business as usual. A lot of people are working online. Unfortunately, due to the sensitivity of some of their information, people are having to come into the office and work on the sensitive information. But other than that, they do their best to work online. We've actually seen some increase in overtime since these people went working remotely. I don't know if it's because they do what they can and then they get their children put to bed and then they work so they can make up lost time. On the design build side, and of course it's challenging working. I do a lot of work with OBO, overseas business with Department of State. They're pretty much all working offline, so communication is slow. Projects that we've been awarded are moving. I did have one put on hold last week. Some of the job sites that the contractors we're partnered with have been shut down for a period of time. Some have just started opening. I've heard in some of the less developed countries, material is a real problem at this moment. But all in all, I think as a firm, we've all adjusted. I've been coming into the office pretty much every day early because my Wi-Fi stinks where I live out in the boonies. But other than that, it's been pretty close to business as usual, just a lot slower.
Great, great, good. Pat, sounds like you guys are doing what you can. We have a question from the participants that came in via the chat, and I think this one goes to Nia. I believe you mentioned that you had done a Skype site visit. Okay. The question is, was it a DEB project, a Department of Engineering Buildings state project or not? Or, what kind of project was it?
No, the bulk of our work is multifamily. So normally we work directly for owner developers. And actually, one of my guys, we've had two different ones. One was a Skype with an inspector, who the inspector was on Skype telling the contractor, this is what I want to look at. Turn the camera this way, move down the hall. And he got his inspection that way. The other is one of my guys, one of our clients who does a lot of work in Florida has put a moratorium on the client, does not want anyone flying to the job sites. So my guy doing CA has been on Skype directing the contractor, hey, show me this, take a photo of this, move in this direction. And apparently it's been working remarkably well. There's been back and forth with Bluebeam where just yesterday I heard him, the contractor wasn't getting it. So he drew a little diagram here, show me this. And it's really been better than we expected it would be.
That's great, really leveraging the tools that we're using, really. I have a contractor specific question. What can AEs do to better facilitate construction during this challenging time? What are you looking for AEs to do? Maybe Will.
Yeah, I'll say flexibility might be one of the first things. Nia mentioned it earlier, inspectors, it seems like lenders, I'm seeing the same things, Nia, as we've gotten inspections via FaceTime with the city of Richmond, actually, which is a notoriously stringent locality, or rigid, I guess I should say. So to have them be able to accommodate a FaceTime inspection is pretty impressive. So it's the same kind of works throughout the whole team. So that includes on the AE side. Just flexibility. If that means review a pay application, maybe some folks aren't doing that in person, so maybe that needs to be on a FaceTime call or Skype, or use webcams from the trailer. That's something that is kind of important. I'll also say the flexibility in that I mentioned earlier, there's some states where manufacturing has stopped, to my knowledge, and Pennsylvania being one of those. So if we have a product that's specified or we're supposed to get from Pennsylvania, we're scrambling when we find that information out. We're trying to look at alternates. So just as a design team, being flexible with looking at what else we can do with what we can get. I also think there's a sense of urgency around us that we know we can get work in place now. I can't speak to next week. So if there's an impediment on the site and we need a quick response on it, it becomes a little more urgent maybe than normal. I understand everybody's working remotely, so maybe that's a challenge as well. But we end up, there's an urgency, I think, to get work done while we can. Also just embracing technology. So being able to use Skype, FaceTime, Zoom. I think most AE firms are great at that, so that's usually not a challenge, but just making sure we're embracing the technology so we communicate that way. And I think there's a little bit of level of trust. I spoke to pay applications earlier. Most architects or engineers are coming out and doing a pretty thorough pay application inspection, and some firms that aren't doing the on-site inspections, it's going to be next to impossible to show everything on a FaceTime call you normally would look at in that inspection. So it goes to relationships and trust. I think the team's got to trust each other a little bit more now than ever.
If I could add to that, I think Will is exactly right. One of our biggest concerns was pay applications. And two things we have found useful. One is, goes to your flexibility comment, that with a lot of our contractors, we'll have our guy go out after hours or on a weekend. So maybe only the job super and our guy are walking the project, so there's not a lot of exposure. So even our guys who are more concerned about being out and about, they're comfortable with that. The other is with our remote projects that, for example, we have a project in Wisconsin. Nobody's flying there. So we've actually put together a protocol for inspections, specifically what photos and or video that we're requiring of the contractor. And then when we signed the pay app, we actually add to the pay app that there was not an on-site inspection, that this was done through photos and videos supplied by the contractor. And so far, even the banks have been fine with that. The general feeling I have is that everybody involved in this wants construction to go forward. It's such an engine of the economy that it feels like everybody's pulling together, everybody's doing the most they can to get these projects moving and continuing. And Will's right. We don't know what's going to happen next week, so get as much as you can done this week.
Great, great. So question for Nia and Pat. Is there anything general contractors could be doing that would help you in your practice?
I would say Will hit the nail on the head. It's trust. We're fortunate that even though we work in a lot of different places, the majority of the contractors are ones we have a long experience with. And so there is that trust to begin with. That and just, flexibility and everybody understanding there may be a problem today. So let's do it tonight. Let's do it tomorrow. And that, as I said, I just have this overwhelming feeling of teamwork, that people are bending over backwards to make this work. And so we've had very, very good luck with our contractors. On the whole, actually one contractor is doing something interesting for interior work. They're sending guys in shifts. So they have a day shift and a night shift so that the two different subs are not actually coming in contact with each other, which I thought was sort of an interesting approach.
I think even without this pandemic going on, I believe communication is the utmost, especially in the design build realm for construction administration. I know some of my overseas sites that we deal with, we don't do site visits, so we don't really have any exposure there, but they're busy trying to get their submittals done, review the drawings, RFIs, try to get a lot of questions answered and submittals approved so that when things do open up, they have the answers there and they can kind of expedite some of this information.
Have you experienced difficulties trying to secure permits or certificate of occupancies during this time?
I cannot answer to that for my overseas sites.
We have not. I actually, again, in anticipation of this, I talked to all my project managers over the last 24 hours. And in the last couple days, we've gotten a VHDA approval. We've got another set going into VHDA this week. The reviews seem to be fine. Henrico, those guys are reviewing from home, but they're still reviewing. We just got a permit this week. We've got a project in Norfolk that we got code comments and we're returning them to Monday. So it feels like even the permit offices that are open are really trying.
Thanks. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'd say yes and no, Ed. Kind of to Nia's point, three weeks ago, if you told me we've gotten as many inspections, as many permit reviews, as many certificate of occupancies as we've gotten in the last 3 weeks, I wouldn't have believed you. So I think to your point of teamwork, we see localities. I'll speak to the city of Richmond. We've got a lot of work going on in the city. They shut down for a week. So it was 1 week where really nothing happened. But since then, they've adapted fairly quickly. We've seen folks, I've seen permits issued on a Saturday, which I think would be unheard of generally before, but it seems like there's a teamwork mentality to this to kind of let's do what we take to get it done. We've been able to do, like I said, FaceTime inspections to get finals, and we've seen third-party inspections be utilized more in certain localities. So if there's a third-party inspection firm, they're able to jump in if somehow the locality has an issue where they can't get to it. So it speaks a little bit to flexibility, but we are seeing things move. You know, there are certain challenges. So it comes to that you don't quite know what's going to happen that day. But it does seem to be, people are kind of getting used to this new normal is what I see.
Has anyone tried to execute a change order for additional time? Is this or how are your firms approaching?
We have had 2 contractors put the owner on notice that there is going to be a time delay, but at this point nobody really knows what it is, so it was more notice. Generally, we've not seen delays, although we did have a project in Tampa where somebody working on the project actually came down with what they believe is coronavirus. So the contractor shut the entire project down until they come back with a diagnosis on it. So certainly they've already mentioned time delay. So we're expecting them for all of our projects, but I don't think anybody really knows what they're going to be.
I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
On their overseas jobs, I know that the owner or the country that the project is in has mandated the sites to be shut down. Department of State is pretty flexible with issues like this. It's written in their contract. The contractor can ask for a delay claim, but they work. The Department of State is pretty flexible in some of this, probably more so in this time than any other time.
That's good to know. We've already answered one of our health, safety, and welfare questions regarding kind of best practices and alternate methods for site visits. But for the real-time site visits that are being made to ongoing construction projects, have you experienced any reluctance from field staff for visiting construction sites, and are there any? What are your safety plans in place for these to protect these individuals?
Will, you want to start with that?
Yes,
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
Please.
Yeah, sure. So as far as measures in place, it ends up being site specific, Ed, but I would say we've made additional efforts to ensure hand washing. I know is one thing that we can do a better job of. Most people visit job sites, we have a porta potty out there, and people are probably less likely than normal to wash their hands given the state of some porta potties. So it's really on the onus on the general contractor, I think, to provide multiple and good hand washing stations throughout the site. That's one thing we've been doing. Some sites, every site's different. So some have running water. That's very easy. Others don't, and we just adapt accordingly based on what the conditions are. So we try to make people as comfortable as possible with actions like this. We don't host meetings. We don't use the job site trailer. If we do host a meeting, it's everybody's outside. You're at least 6 feet apart for foreman's meetings. We try to educate all the workers on site as best we can with signage, and again with the foreman's meetings. So it's educational. It's making the sites as safe as possible. There's certain tasks. The nature of our industry requires sometimes people to be a little close. We try our best to avoid that. I'm not quite sure it's always possible, but we do our best on that. And I think that if that becomes an inspecting entity or an outside agency, if they see we're taking these steps, who see we're taking it seriously, I think they feel more comfortable coming to the site. So again, it is a little bit job specific, but it's also a matter of getting all the information out to the project teams and reinforcing how important it is to implement a plan.
Will, I have a follow-up question for you. How has on-site quality control procedures how has these procedures been implemented in order to accommodate less site visits by the AE, particularly high-risk elements such as the building envelope construction or structural steel inspections? Have you run into issues with special inspection firms not being able to, make a site visit?
So far, we've seen all site visits occur for special inspections now. We do have situations where we'll clear the area out, probably more for a comfort than anything else, but just ensure that we don't have any work going on in the area where the inspections occurring. That's for AHJ inspections as well as special inspections. So we are kind of trying to clear those areas out so there's not a big crowd in the space that's being inspected. I know we have done a couple that have been like a FaceTime call or Zoom, but generally that was more for localities and less for special inspections. So the quality control, it has generally moved on about as normal with the aid of a bit of technology, but our internal folks are still doing quality control visits. We still expect the project team to be inspecting quality as normally would. Obviously, just being cognizant of social distancing as best we can when we do those.
Do you expect systems testings or commissioning occurring during these times?
I do. You know, I certainly expect. Again, we have to be flexible. We don't quite know what each particular company is doing or each particular situation warrants. But we still anticipate inspections moving as normal or commissioning, startup, all of that process, all those processes working as they normally would, with just a site-by-site specific plan to ensure that everybody's comfortable and safe when they do their particular inspections.
Great. Let's go back to the general questions that we started with. And this is for all the panelists. How are you effectively integrating the owner into this newly adapted construction administration process? What concerns are owners sharing with you?
For us, as I said, one of our larger owners who builds a lot in Atlanta and Florida has stopped all on-site OAC meetings, and they're not allowing any of their personnel to fly to any of their projects. For a good majority of our projects, maybe 60%, the owner is not local to where the project is. So that's fairly true across the board. But that being said, with multifamily being a specialty, it's not unusual at all for example, the owner is in Atlanta, we're here, structural is in Northern Virginia, and the project's in Wisconsin. And so as a team within what we do, we're very used to just like this, the Zoom, Skype meetings, that kind of thing. So it's actually been going pretty smoothly. I think the sense I've been getting from our owners is as much as they want their projects to move forward, I think they feel a lot of social responsibility as sort of in some ways the captain of the ship. And so they're trying to be as non-demanding and as flexible as possible if you know, people who don't want to go to a job site, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll respond. What Nia said, I agree with completely. The owners, what I've seen is owners are certainly feeling the social responsibility to be maybe a little bit less demanding. I think part of that for our multifamily work is that the market has less demand right now. So if we were under the gun to get a building turned over right now, there's not a whole lot of incentive for the owner to take a building right now. We're coming into leasing season soon. So they're not gonna lease up a building like they, I think, would have had the situation not occurred. So that is a little bit, there's a little bit less kind of pressure or stress from the owner side when it comes to kind of completion of multifamily projects in particular. You know, the other one is in work in active facilities with owners. I think there's a leap of faith you have to take if you're going to demolish an existing space that you're hoping nothing is going to change. It's not going to allow you to finish that space. So I'm working on that on a couple of projects now that we're going to go demo a place that's usable now in the hopes that we're going to be able to complete it without there being a shutdown or a massive material shortage that are going to affect our ability to complete. And also on the OAC meeting side, we're not really seeing any in-person OAC meetings at this point. Everybody's pretty well embraced technology. The Zoom, Skype, all that's worked pretty well, and the owners are on board from what I've seen.
I think from, well, doing design build, I really only work with one owner, and that's Department of State. I wouldn't say that from my perspective, we've adapted new construction administration processes, because we have, we've had good processes in place for many, many years through a Department of State owned FTP site. So that's where most of our CA work comes in. That's where we receive submittals and RFIs and any other information that that the team has access to. So we are just notified and then we just go pick it up. I do think the owner, Department of State, is very concerned about the health and welfare of their people on site and the contractor on site. So they're taking, I believe they're taking some measures. I know one of the sites that I'm associated with, Department of State did shut it down earlier this week for a couple of weeks, which pushed the, which wouldn't allow the contractor to access. So what they're doing now is they are trying to send us submittals and RFIs and help them with anything that they can stay busy outside the site on in preparation that when the site has access, they have the materials or the prefab stuff built that they can go in, you know, and efficiently do that work.
Has the request for information or shop drawing processes been modified at all, or is it just business as usual?
From my standpoint, it's just business as usual. It's a process that's been in place, as I said, for many, many years on Department of State projects. So it's really nothing new. They have very defined in Division 1 how you submit submittals, you know, how you submit RFIs. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of having different contractors at different sites doing different CA procedures.
I was just going to say, same for us. I mean, years ago, all of our RFIs and submittals went electronic. And so there hasn't been any kind of hitch at all along those lines.
Yeah, I can't speak for anybody else, but, you know, we don't get a ton on our overseas projects. We do not get a ton of emails with submittals attached to it or RFIs because of the effectiveness of the FTP site that Department of State has established to manage the flow of information for these projects.
Any other comments from our panelists? We could open the floor for participant questions. We do have some already in the group chat.
I have a quick comment, Ed. Speaking to the survey that you referenced at the very beginning of this, I would say our experience to date now, as soon as it became clear where everything was heading, we made sure all of our billing was up to date. But that being said, things have not slowed down for us a bit. In fact, we've had 3 inquiries this week for new multifamily projects, and we're working on new site plans. The only slowdown we've had at all, we've had 2 projects, one in Florida, one in Charlotte, and the 2 different developers have permit drawings in hand, but they don't want to get the job bid right now because they're afraid that there's so many unknowns going on that they're going to get crazy numbers. So they want to hold on 2-3 months before they get the project bid. But other than that, we're not, you know, knock on wood, seeing a slowdown yet, which, I mean, I put that out there to be encouraging to people that things are strange, but they're not necessarily terrible within what we do.
I'd agree to the same thing you said. We're seeing the exact same thing. Work is still flowing in the door. I don't have a great feel yet for how lenders are analyzing this situation. So banks, VHDA, HUD, whoever the lender is on a particular project, I don't quite have a feel yet for how they're going to react. That would probably be where there'll be some interest. I think owners are still anxious, particularly on work that's already in the pipeline, to kind of continue going?
We're still seeing RFPs coming in-house to review and provide pricing on, and we're also hearing from our sources through our pipeline that at least Department of State and maybe in the Corps, they are still working in the background, to provide new RFPs for work, in the near future.
I think I like to hear the optimism out there. With my firm, we're continuing to working on proposals, ongoing feasibility studies. What we've seen, our primary client is higher education. We do a considerable amount of work for VCU. Projects currently under construction are continuing, but they're not going to bid any new projects till May 1st. So just a little, and then hoping they get good numbers, I guess.
Yeah.
To play that one. Have to play that one by ear. So there's a couple questions from participants that are germane here. And if you're a participant and you want to chime in, I think this is the time you can unmute yourself. Rhea, tell me if you don't want me to do this, or just type in the question. But here it goes. One participant says, our office has several projects in hospitals. Do any of you have current projects in hospitals? I can tell you from KOPA's, my firm's standpoint, we've had 2 inquiries. We specialize in biocontainment labs for medical research. So, and we also do hospital work, have for many years. So our skills transfer directly to what's needed, but we don't know that the project's moving forward necessarily. So we have been contacted. Anyone else, either in the participant pool or on the jury?
Our Charleston office has a specialty with medical, but not full hospitals. They're usually 10 to 15,000 square foot medical buildings. And we have not seen any kind of slowdown on that. In fact, last week we got a permit on one, and I did a substantial completion on another. So that's, slightly different, but it's been moving.
And we have a fair amount of assisted living work going on. We've done a bunch of work in hospitals at KBS, but we don't currently have a hospital job under construction. And I haven't necessarily heard what the status of those has been.
May I jump in?
Yeah, please jump in. Who do we have?
My name's Maria Creedy, and I'm with Horde Copeland Mott out of Baltimore.
Welcome.
And thank you. I'm in the healthcare division, and we have been very busy lately. In fact, I have an active construction job going on right now, and just as everyone's been saying, we've been relying on technology to do all of our in-wall inspections. I will be doing an above ceiling punch this coming week. And we've been very diligent about who's on site when. We're doing most of our stuff after hours when the site is clearing out, and it's just a small handful of people. But some of our projects have been put on delay because it's not as urgent. Our more patient room type projects have been accelerated, and so have some of our surgical projects have been accelerated. So we're busy. This may be a good thing for the healthcare, but it's moving.
That's great.
Actually, may I ask you a question? We have a project under construction in Baltimore, and
Yes.
Our project manager's been hearing rumors that Baltimore may be shutting construction down. Have you heard anything about that, Maria?
Well, because I'm in essential, they've considered healthcare essential. I haven't heard the other departments being closed down. We've got a plethora of projects that we do. Our housing is still moving ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
So I haven't heard it yet, but don't be surprised if something switches next week.
Yeah.
let's see, so we have quite a few comments from our participants. One is about just in general conducting business. I don't know if anyone can comment on this. Other than limiting flights, are there similar issues with finding hotels for those of you that have to make site visits? Distance driving. I was talking to an engineer just yesterday about a survey that we need to do, and the reluctance is getting in the car with two other engineers. We can keep the 6-foot rule. So are we going to take three vehicles up from Hampton Roads? So we elected just to wait till this blows over and do the drawings, and we'll see if it fits later.
I was in Atlanta last week, Thursday, Friday, and I have to tell you, the Marriott I was in probably had 5 rooms occupied, and they were incredibly happy that we were there and very conscious of what was going on. In fact, the manager was manning the front desk because I think they had let a lot of their people go. And she told me one of the people traveling, one of the guests that came in, was actually arguing with her about their coronavirus protocol. And she said she finally had to get to the point to tell them that you're not going to stay here tonight unless you respect this distance between people, you know, all the other things that they wanted you to do. And she said, other than that, people have been very mindful, very good. And so she's hopeful that they'll still be getting guests, but I haven't seen hotels fully closed down, but I can imagine that's coming.
Thank you, Nia. Just this another question from a participant who had a phone interview with the Norfolk and Baltimore Corps of Engineers this morning. So they are still working remotely, but this person would like to hear from the panelists their opinion of state work. You know, given the House and Senate budget committees are looking hard at the budget, and you know, revenues, obviously state revenues are going to be down because of this crisis, which could mean, you know, less work for higher ed or the BCCS. Any thoughts on that? I'll start with that one. Yes, I think this is, we're gonna, you know, the tax base is going to decrease. But I believe that the projects that are necessary and that were funded to begin with through other means, not through the capital pool, will still move forward. People want to build these projects. But yeah, I believe that the pool funded projects are in jeopardy. That's just my personal opinion here. Any comments from our panelists on just projecting? This is pure conjecture on the path forward.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine with everything that's going on, there's not an impact on future work. Almost regardless of industry, maybe there's certain that will be spared, but it's hard to imagine, you know, 8 months from now, 10 months from now, we're not feeling some sort of reverberations from this. Hopefully, it probably depends, from what I've heard from most owners, it depends on the length more than anything else. So particularly the state work, as you mentioned, tax base going down significantly, there's less dollars to move around. I do think the government will feel the need to inject work into the system. So there might be some more government spending based on that, but otherwise it's hard to imagine there's not some reverberations.
Yeah.
Hey, Ed, this is Gordon Dixon. I'm sorry, I apologize, not on the panel, but as the AGC CEO, to kind of pine in a little bit on that question. We are hearing that at least the state is anticipating at least $1 billion shortfall in their next 2-year budget. At least $1 billion. It could be up to $2 billion. But then you also have to start thinking about localities dealing with almost the exact same issues. And so you need to kind of be prepared and be thinking about those kind of contingencies moving forward, and how do you want to adjust your position, your firm moving forward with those concepts in mind.
All good input. Thank you, Gordon. Any other comments from our participants out there, or insights from our panelists? We have one comment from one of our participants who's a university architect, and they've offered to do field reports for projects to augment the AE's efforts and limit their time on campus. The non-capital projects have taken me up on this, but not so much for the capital projects. That's wonderful. Hats off to you as the former architect for the colleges, for Virginia's community colleges. That's outstanding work.
Hey, Ed.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Great job. Quick question. I was wondering if the panelists could talk a little more about how they think punch walkthroughs might occur, since those are a little bit more scrutinized. I remember when I was in practice, you're counting, face plates, for example. Do they think that punchless walkthroughs will? How do they think that will shift in terms of the expectations? I'd just love to hear the panelists speak about that real quick.
That's a good question. I think a little bit what Will and I were talking about earlier, sort of the trust issue is going to be part of it. But I do think, especially with our local jobs, with our guys going after hours with just the job super or someone similar, that they can still spend the time they need to on the job. Within what we do in multifamily, we do overall general punches. We're not punching out every single unit. Generally, the owner has someone on their team who actually does that, because they never want to pay us to do it. So they have, but with our general overall punches, it hasn't been too much of a problem yet.
Yeah, Corey, we've seen punches generally go as normal. The couple differences would be there's always a parade of folks, or used to be a parade of folks following the person doing the punch list. So you'd have maybe 4 or 5 people from the maintenance staff, maybe from the AE firm, the owner, a couple guys from the general contractor, and maybe even some folks that can touch up things quickly. That doesn't occur anymore. So there's not the 7 or 8 or 9 people walking a building or in a particular unit to do that punch. Also, it goes back to technology. I know at KBS, we have a punch tool, a punch app we can share with owners doing punch lists, so they could go do the punch list. Like Nia mentioned, after hours or when nobody else or far less people are there, and they could basically be by themselves doing the punch, upload it to the app, and then the whole team can see it. So it's a matter of just embracing technology, I think, more so than ever.
I have one comment here. It says one of our contractors is using Build Up for punch lists. Is that a program that anyone is familiar with?
That's what we use, Ed. Yeah, we use Build Up. It's been a great tool.
Great.
It's worked very well with the projects we've done with KBS.
So this is a great one here, and this is definitely for our panelists. Can any bright mind, and our panelists we have a very robust panel here of bright minds. Can you estimate a slowdown in the exponential curve of the virus cases in Virginia and Maryland? When will we plateau? So you're on. You can take the 5th if you want.
Well, I have no personal knowledge, but I read a fairly lengthy article yesterday that was saying mid to late May. I think if history of the last 3 months is any indication, nobody really knows. Who stays home, who goes out, who respects what's going on. I think it's for everybody a guess at best. So that's my guess, mid-May.
Sooner the better.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And we have time for maybe one or two questions. This one's coming from one of the participants for on-site punch site, punch list visits or site visits. Are architects using more than just a mask and gloves, or whatever? What PPE are they using? Are they practicing social distancing?
Our guys are using social distancing. I personally have become a fiend with Clorox wipes, but right now none of our guys are using masks. I read an article from the Surgeon General that there's a question about the efficacy of gloves, in that you have to be particularly careful with them, because the gloves will hold on to germs, and you may not be cleaning your hands the way you would. And so if you touch your face with a glove that has germs, it's, so you have to be acutely aware of that. So right now our guys are more with disinfectants and distance, especially since most construction is outside. So they're not quite as concerned about if you were in an enclosed space.
I'll go the same thing. I think I read the same article Nia did. We actually researched whether or not we should be distributing gloves to our sites, and we got the same information. So disinfectants to me is the key, especially with if it's a multifamily job, you have a lot of doors to go in and out of. So I think you're best off just maybe if you carry personal disinfectant on you, because there's a lot of in and out of doors. That's probably one of the trickiest things we deal with.
That's all good advice. Any last words from Nia, Will, or Pat?
Well, I would say on the one hand, if anybody has any questions, I'm certainly happy at any time to, reach out, discuss things with you. And on the other, try and stay optimistic. I do feel like we're going to pop out on the other side of this well, because, as of the last week of February, first week of March, the financial underpinnings of the economy were so strong. So this is a virus problem, not really an economic driven problem. So hopefully we'll all, in July be like, oh, we're great now. We'll see.
I think we should be resilient at this time. Definitely maintain our social distancing and listen to the governor and our illustrious leaders on staying social distancing. What I've read, it seems like it's working. But, these are trying times, and everybody's been through trying times, and we'll get over them, and we'll be stronger for it.
So that's great, Pat. That's a good way to end up here. Corey, are we ready for final words here? I would like to thank the panelists and our participants for this active discussion. I know you can't hear a clap, but I'm going to send out some claps here with my reaction. Let's see, trying to give a clap to Nia. Anyway, this is the first time I've used it. Second Zoom I've ever done. This is the first time. Anyway,
I like your clap. I saw it.
Okay, great.
Well,
I got
just
thumbs
to
up
echo, I would just say, just to echo, thank you to all of our panelists. Ed, you did a fantastic job, and thank you for engaging in this important dialogue with us. I will say that a survey will be sent out to all participants to gain feedback in an official capacity. But while I have everyone on the line, I have your attention, if you could just go to your chat box, and on a scale of 1 through 5, with 5 being extremely valuable and 1 being pretty worthless, go ahead and punch in a number so we just kind of take a straw poll of how you thought the conversation went as we look to more of these conversations. Words of encouragement are just to hang tight, hang in there, be encouraged, my friends. We know we'll all get through this together. I would encourage you also to visit the AIA Virginia website, aiava.org. And again, that's aiava.org. We have a COVID-19 resource page. It's a living document. Lots of great resources. We just updated to give you some concise information on loan and grant opportunities for your businesses as a result of the recently passed CARES Act. Resources for firms, individuals. Just hop on there, take a look. We hope it can be of some value to you. That's what the associations are for. Please be safe. Enjoy your weekend. I look forward to seeing the results of the surveys and engaging in some more conversations. We'll get through this together. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Everybody, have a good weekend.
Take care.
Thank you.